Well, it's Thanksgiving week and a happy Turkey Day to all of you. We've got a ton to get to, including what exactly is a rabbi for peace? Well, we've learned, and it's not good. Also, Joe Biden is 81 years old today, and he's just as creepy as ever. And I think the world just learned how to say Brexit in Spanish. All that and more coming up right now. Hey, I'm Larry O'Connor. Call me Larry. And over the weekend, we had a earthquake of a political nature reverberating all around the world, coming from Buenos Aires, Argentina, where a libertarian candidate just beat the status quo and the establishment. I mean, you talk about establishment. His opponent was a Peronista. Yeah, Juan Perón. Like, Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, not the Madonna version. That wasn't even any good. I mean, the original Broadway version. That's how established his opponent was. And he just crushed him. This guy, Javier Milei, is a radio talk show host and economist. And if you want to know what his platform was, well, watch this.
Equipo y deporte, afuera. Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera. Aunque te resistas. Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación, afuera. Ministerio de Trabajo, Empleo y Seguridad Social, afuera. Ministerio de Educación, Adoctrinamiento, afuera. Ministerio de Transporte, afuera. Ministerio de Salud, afuera. Ministerio de Desarrollo Social, afuera. Se acabó el curro de la política. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo!
I'm sorry, is it possible to be actually aroused by a political 45-second statement? I need a cigarette. I'm actually attracted to this man despite the hair and me being incredibly heterosexual. But that was phenomenal. Why can we get that, please? We've had Republican candidates in America promising to do away with just 3 departments: energy, commerce, and education. Take that, Rick Perry. And they still can't do it. Even when they get the presidency and the majorities, they won't do it. He just won an election in Argentina by promising to do exactly that. By the way, one other thing about this election, Argentina utilizes 100% paper ballots. And it's an incredibly urban country. Vast majority of the population lives in Buenos Aires and their other larger cities. And they knew the results of this election utilizing paper ballots within about an hour, hour and a half from the polls closing. Huh. That gives you pause, doesn't it? All right. Now that's very cool. But wait till you see this interview that Javier Milei made, because this is the one that's getting everybody pumped up.
Al zurdo de mierda no le podés dar ni un milímetro.
Pero ¿me podés definir zurdo de mierda? Que no
todos los que, digamos, los colectivistas, los que ponen, digamos, o sea, esa idea. A ver,
¿por qué le pones de mierda, digamos?
Porque son una mierda. O sea, no, pero es que si pensás distinto te van a aniquilar. Ese es el punto. Es decir, vos al zurdo no le podés dar un milímetro, porque le das un milímetro y lo toma para destrozarte. Es decir, vos no podés negociar con el zurdo. No se negocia. No se negocia con esa mierda, no se negocia porque te van a llevar puesto. Si tienen un golpeador que caga trompadas a la mujer, digamos, si es de ellos, ¿entendés? Se pone el pañuelito verde y grita todo el tiempo contra el neoliberalismo, lo ocultan. ¿Me entendés? O sea, si de repente hay alguien que acosó a un periodista que acosa a otra periodista, lo ocultan. Es decir, a todos los de ellos lo ocultan. Todas esas aberraciones la ocultan. Ahora, si vos estás del otro lado, a vos te van a estropear, te van a matar, te van a dar con lo que sea. No les importa arruinarte la vida. ¿Por qué? Porque no pensás como ellos. ¿Y sabes qué es lo bueno de todo esto? Hay algo bueno en todo esto. Porque como el error es humano, como todos nos podemos equivocar, ¿sabes qué nos obligan? Nos obligan a ser mejores. Y como estamos siendo tan mejores que ellos, como los estamos aplastando en la batalla cultural, los estamos pasando de arriba, porque no solo le ganamos en lo productivo, somos superiores moralmente, somos superiores estéticamente, somos mejores en todo. Y les duele. Entonces, como no pueden pelear con las herramientas legítimas, se apalancan en el aparato represivo del Estado, poniendo torres de guita para hacernos mierda. Y aún así no pueden. Tuvieron que bajar la nota. ¿Me entendés? Que están perdiendo. Están desesperados, están perdiendo la batalla cultural. Los zurdos de mierda, por primera vez, se ven acorralados. Los zurdos de mierda.
Yeah, cathartic is right. And does that sound familiar? The picture he just painted about how the left has run roughshod over free speech and anyone who thinks differently than them, culturally, morally, economically, how they cancel you if you make one mistake. And since everyone makes mistake, you'll be canceled no matter what. And yet, of course, on their side, they protect their own, from journalists to politicians to people in the elite media. Does that sound familiar to anyone out there? Do you want more? I know you do. Let's have more. Keep reading. It's okay. I know it's Spanish, it's captions, but we're on this.
¿En qué locura estamos viviendo? La locura de la corrección política estúpida, donde básicamente, no, si ustedes no recitan el socialismo cool, si ustedes no son woke, entonces son violentos, son un peligro para la democracia. Vamos, muchachos.
Seguro.
Sigamos con estas estupideces y en lugar de ser 140, vamos a hacer la Villa Miseria más grande del mundo. ¿En qué
Yeah, see, again, this is echoing exactly what we're dealing with right now in this country. And of course, the left in American media and really worldwide, the people who have an entrenched interest in the status quo and the establishment and left-wing policies and politics, they're going nuts right now. They think that Argentina is about to become a complete disaster. They're showing this video of him visually showing exactly what he wants to do to Argentina's federal budget and all those programs that you just saw him ripping off of that board. This is as a bit of a visual reminder to everyone, he's taking to using a chainsaw because that's what he wants to do to the bureaucracy and to the government there. And the left is going nuts. The left thinks this is insane. The left says that Argentina is now about to become an economic basket case. Hey, left. Argentina is an economic basket case. They've got 150% inflation. They're about to default on a huge loan that they got from the Global Monetary Fund. It's so bad in Argentina right now, with 40% of the population living below the poverty line, that this president is flirting with the idea of bringing in the US dollar as their new currency. Yeah, it's that bad. He thinks the dollar is going to help him out. You want one more clip? Okay, one more. Because people are wondering, what kind of president is this guy going to be? What kind of policy, beyond just what he's going to do for the federal government there, what kind of international statesman will he be? Well, he has pledged that his first trip abroad will be to Israel. There are images of him campaigning last night, standing in the streets, waving a giant Israeli flag. And he gave this appearance on Argentinian television.
Digo, yo no voy a la iglesia, voy al templo. No hablo con sacerdote. Tengo un rabino de cabecera. Estudio la Torá. Digamos, se me reconoce internacionalmente como amigo de Israel y estudioso la Torá, que es casi, digamos, como, digamos, digo, estoy a poco, ¿no?
De ser judío, decís.
Sí, exacto. Digo, solamente me falta el pacto de sangre.
Sí, sí, claro, claro.
Bueno, si hay alguien que pelea contra eso, soy yo.
Claro.
Entonces,
de hecho, perdón, ¿no te atacan porque tenés posiciones geopolíticas muy cercanas con Israel? ¿No es al revés?
Claro.
También me atacan por eso. Bueno, claro. A ver, yo ni lo sabe, pero una de las cosas que yo propuse, digo, además de alinearme con Israel y con Estados Unidos, una de las cosas que yo dije es, yo quiero mudar la embajada desde Tel Aviv a Jerusalén.
Again, can I ask you one more time rhetorically, does any of this sound familiar? And of course, the left-wing media there in Argentina, around the world, they immediately and instinctively call this guy a fascist, or they'll call him a Nazi or a Hitler, because that's what they do to anyone that they disagree with or anyone who calls them out and actually reveals who they are. But he's actually friendlier to Israel than the Perón party in Argentina. In fact, there's a bit of a bad history there in Argentina and with the Nazis. You might want to look that up or just watch the X-Files Origins movie. That'll sort of lay it out for you as well. The bottom line is people are looking at this election in Argentina and the election of this guy, a man with no political experience, a talk radio host with remarkable hair And they're thinking to themselves in the same way they did in 2016 when the Brexit vote shocked the world over in England, that maybe this is a precursor. Maybe this is a bit of a clue as to where our country is headed 1 year from now when we have our presidential election. Yeah, how exactly do you say Brexit in Spanish? Maybe Javier. Moving on, all of these protests that you see from the people who are against big oil, right? They glue themselves to great works of art, or they blockade bridges and major thoroughfare and streets. In fact, we just saw a bridge blocked the other day that for hours on end as people were trying to get to the hospital, ambulances were trying to get down the road, but they blocked the bridge because of climate change, because of big oil, or they'll sit in an intersection. It's bad here in the US, but it's tons worse over in Europe and in England, where they have some level of tolerance for this stuff, which is probably, by the way, a good lesson. We're always lectured by Western Europe that we here in America, we haven't done enough about climate change. We haven't signed on to the Paris Accords or the Kyoto Protocols or any of those things, even though we've actually reduced carbon emissions, if you believe in that sort of thing, more than any of the countries who did sign on to the Kyoto Protocols. But we get lectured to all the time by Western Europe that we need to do more, right? Greta Thunberg waving her chubby little finger at us saying, how dare you? How dare you? Listen, these guys in Western Europe actually acquiesce to the mob. They acquiesce to the lunatics who are supergluing themselves to a Van Gogh, and they still have to deal with all the protests. It's never enough. As a great man in Argentina once said rather recently, you can't give these leftards an inch. And in Europe, they certainly have. But finally, somebody told them exactly what needed to be said. Watch this fantastic confrontation.
What do you mean just stop oil? All your stuff is made out of oil, you idiot. Your clothes, these jackets, they're all made out of oil. What the hell are you doing here, making a nuisance of yourselves? It's a joke. What a joke. What are you doing here? Get out the road. You're wasting everybody's time and petrol. All these guys, their engines are running all the time, wasting more bloody oil, you nutters. What is this made out of? What are your clothes made out of? How did your clothes get here? They got here by oil. What are you doing? This makes no sense at all. Just stop oil. You haven't thought about this. If you want to stop oil, you need to stay at home and go and live in the forest. What do you mean just...
That is so beautiful and so perfect. And by the way, can I just replay one part of this? It's my favorite. When the camera pans over, he's literally saying, look at, these are nylon vests you're wearing. And also, how do you think they got to the store where you bought them or delivered them to your home if you order them online? Oil. It's made out of oil. It was delivered by oil. And take a look as the camera pans, because they all start looking at their clothes.
What is this made out of? What are your clothes made out of? How did your clothes get here? They got here.
Oh, geez, I hadn't thought of that. Of course they hadn't thought of that. They never think about these things. Finally, somebody just stepped out there and told them what we've all been thinking. Especially the fact that when they block a street, everybody's stuck and their engines are running. Which way? What are they going to do after they've been sitting for 2 hours in a road closure because these stupid idiots, stop oil protesters, have delayed them? Well, because they burned all that gas, they're going to go to the gas station and fill up some more. So they're really accomplishing the consumption and waste of more petroleum products, including gasoline and oil. It just occurred to me. I never realized it. These people are probably the greatest scam put out by big oil corporations. In fact, we should trace the money. They're probably getting funded by the major oil drillers in America. It's a great way to make sure that there's more oil consumption. They're making bucks off of this. I smell a rat. Ooh, speaking of smelling rats, happy birthday, Joe Biden.
And by the way, I like kids better than people. I wish I could stay and watch Wonka with you, but I'm not going to get to do that.
All right. Dude is 81 years old today. And let's just say he has a history of saying and doing inappropriate things around young women, young girls even. You've seen all the videos of him sort of manhandling children as their parents are getting sworn into the Senate and stuff. And You remember before he ran for president back in 2019, he ran for president. Remember that? Anyway, before he ran for president, he put out a video saying, all right, listen, I come from a different era, a different time where there were different rules and protocols, and maybe I invaded the personal space of some people, but I recognize things are different now. We're living in a different culture, and I'm going to do better. I've changed my ways. I'm not going to behave that way anymore. Remember that? Yeah, so here he is the day before his birthday. This was yesterday. And he spotted one little girl in the audience and decided to make his way over to her.
Thank you, thank you. And I love your ears. I love them. They're really cool. What's your name? Catherine. Catherine, what a beautiful name. That's my mommy's name. Well, nice to see. How old are you, 17? 6. Thank you, thank you.
All right, so listen. He's an old man. He's a grandpa. And grandpas say stuff. And he's trying to be cute and charming. I get it. And just on its own, grandpa going over and finding a little girl wearing little kitty cat ears, saying, I like your ears, which is just a weird thing to say, even if there's kitty cat ears. And then saying, how old are you? 17. It's borderline, but you can kind of excuse it, I suppose, or just sort of rationalize it and making you say, he's just an old man. He's just trying to be cute and charming. But given his history, given the delicate nature of what Joe Biden is associated with, and also add to that the fact that he's got his own granddaughter about the same age as this girl, who he refuses to acknowledge exists because his son, Hunter Biden, knocked up a stripper. It's disturbing to say the least, if not inappropriate, if not downright creepy. And I want to play it one more time because there's something else that someone told me was even extra disturbing about this. It has to do with the methods strange men use to ingratiate themselves to their innocent victims, let's just say. Take a look for the telltale signs.
Thank you. And I love your ears. I love them. They're really cool.
All right, step one, flattery. All right, now.
What's your name? Catherine. Catherine, what a beautiful name. That's my mommy's name.
Step two, create a bond with a person, something in common that you have so that they feel a little bit more at ease and trustworthy.
Well, nice to see. How old are you, 17? 6. Thank you, thank you.
Number 3, I got nothing on that one. That's just gross. That's, well, happy birthday, Joe Biden. Really excited to have you as our oldest president in history. And who among us isn't looking forward to 5 more years? I know Gavin Newsom is. Jordan Peterson is Canadian, but don't hold that against him. Even though he aligns himself with a country, the country of his birth, that can't win a Stanley Cup in, 30, 40 years. I mean, seriously, if you're Canada and you can't even win a hockey championship, what good are you? But he was invited on Bill Maher's panel show. And one thing Jordan Peterson does is tell it like it is and leave liberals in stunned silence, which is exactly what he did. The panel discussion revolved around this newfound realization by the left that, hey, maybe the intellectuals in this country and the people we've handed universities over to don't actually have our country, or for that matter, Western civilization's best interests at heart. There are a lot of people, including Bill Maher, who have realized that anti-Semitism and authoritarian tactics run rampant now on college campuses and in universities. Now, we've been saying it for a long time, so I'm not going to praise him for suddenly coming to the realization, because when we on the right have said it over the last 30 years, we were called anti-intellectual and Neanderthals, and we're just right-wing wackos, right? Well, now suddenly, when they see the ugly face of anti-Semitism, now it's like, oh, wow, what's going on here? Well, leave it to Jordan Peterson to explain it all to them.
The main issue. I mean, part of the reason that you see all this foolishness on university campuses too is because people have bought this idiot meta-Marxism, which is that the way to look at every social relationship that people ever have is through the lens of power. And that is, we can put that squarely at the feet of the universities, as far as I'm concerned, is, you know, marriage is a patriarchal institution and business is nothing but oppression. And you have to view every single situation that emerged historically as oppressor versus oppressed. And then once you get that, which you can get in about 2 minutes, if you sit in a course that teaches that sort of thing, you have a lens to moralize about the whole world through. And then you see the situation is that the leftists have already decided the Palestinians are the victims. And as you pointed out, if you're a victim, then you're morally righteous. And even more conveniently, if you stand for the victim, then you're morally righteous, regardless of what you do with your own life. And that's pretty much what university students are taught from the time they enter the university classroom. And that's how they, you know, orient themselves morally. Well, and that's at the hands of the radical left too, Bill. And one of the things the Democrats also have to pay the price for, I would say, is their absolute refusal to draw a line between the moderate Democrats and the extremists. They're completely incapable of doing that. Like, I've talked to 40 senators and congressmen in the last 5 years. I asked them all the same question, including RFK. He wouldn't answer either. When does the left go too far? Well, we certainly bloody well saw it in the last month, didn't we? Because they got the oppressive narrative a little mucked up, we might say. And the consequences of that are going to unfold pretty brutally over the next few months.
That's just chef's kiss, just perfect. It's just that. In fact, the one thing that clip doesn't show you was what happened next, which was an exquisite and uncomfortable silence in that room. Stunned silence, not just in the panel, but also the screaming memes in Bill Maher's audience, because they don't hear that ever. And that's why it's important for Jordan Peterson to be there. And also, by the way, credit where it's due, Bill Maher for inviting him on. In just those 100 seconds, you saw Jordan Peterson sum up exactly where we are right now and how we got here. Everything in our society, from the intellectual left, on campuses, in the media, in journalism, in pop culture, and in politics, everything has been rung through this meat grinder of intersectionality and the oppressor versus the oppressed. Now, there was a time when the Democratic Party, as you just heard Jordan Peterson mention, where the Democrats actually saw through that and they didn't buy onto it. But to borrow a phrase from Joe Biden, that was your dad's Democrat Party, not this one. Everything changed with Barack Obama when our community organizer in chief was put into the White House and he was given the reins of power and the ability to funnel money to this kind of mindset through the mechanisms of the federal government. And now we're reaping that ugly harvest from critical race theory ideology and Ibram X. Kendi saying that it's not enough just to not be racist. You have to be anti-racist. There's no such thing as a black racist. No, they can't be, because they're the oppressed class, and the oppressed can never be bad. They can never be oppressors. You see how that works? And of course, you want to figure out trans activism right now? Same thing. That's why you see white liberal women who actually intellectually recognize that the rise of transgender men in their spheres, whether it's taking on characters in a movie that was meant for a woman, or whether it's playing on a sport that was carved out via Title IX and the work of feminists from decades gone by, taken up by a man who make the spaces for those young women who are playing sports unsafe, not to mention taking away opportunities from young women. They can't see it and they can't say anything about it because it breaks through that oppressor versus oppressed paradigm that has been thrust upon the American left, and through the American left and through the levers of power in our government, thrust upon the rest of us. But now we're pushing back. Now we're pushing back. And if it took the horrific terror attacks in Israel for a good section of our pop culture and our mainstream media to stop for a minute and say, what the hell? How did we get here? Well, then so be it. But at least now people's eyes are opened. And I assure you, as Real Time with Bill Maher is one of the top rated shows on HBO, and mostly it's top rated in cities like New York and Los Angeles, in San Francisco, it's mostly libs and to the left of center viewers that tune in for that. They just heard that for the very first time. And probably in their living rooms, they experienced that same stunned silence. All right. Moving back over to the UK, Piers Morgan has had some remarkable and fiery debates lately, but this one might take the cake. Rabbi Shmuley Botev, we mentioned him before. He's an American rabbi, conservative. He flew to England so he could be on the panel to debate a Muslim Brit who is taking the side of the Palestinians and Hamas in this current debate. And something remarkable was revealed when Piers Morgan laid out this false argument that, well, there are more Palestinian children who have now been harmed by the Israeli Defense Forces than Israeli children were harmed. Therefore what? Well, you'll see exactly what conclusion they reach.
I don't disagree with you that so far it seems to me, obviously, a fact that many, many more Palestinian civilians, innocent people, are getting killed as retribution by the Israelis for what happened on October 7th.
That's false. And I got to jump in here, Piers Morgan. The thing about Piers Morgan, it's like he's hot and cold. It's like a roller coaster with Piers Morgan. Sometimes he's very good. And listen, if there's one thing that Piers Morgan holds as his North Star, is he wants to provide good television. So I'll give him that because he does generally do that. But I have no idea where he is morally on these issues because he just said something that is atrocious and needs to be called out. Not one Palestinian child has been killed by the Israeli forces in retribution. They're not trying to kill people in retribution, certainly not innocent civilians. No, what the Israeli Defense Forces are doing at the behest of the people of Israel through their elected officials is to go after the terrorist organization that killed over 1,400 innocent people on October 7th. That's not retribution. That is getting the people who did it so it can never happen again. That's like saying the people that ended up dying in Afghanistan and Iraq when we pushed back against the Al-Qaeda attacks of September 11th, that they were killed in retribution by the American military. That's not true at all. It's not retribution. That's a heinous and despicable slander that Piers Morgan just put out there. They're not trying to kill as many Palestinians for payback. No, they would love it if the civilians got out of the way. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. They would love it if the Hamas terrorists would let the Palestinian civilians get out of the way so that they could just go after the bad guys. So I'll start this again, but when you hear Piers Morgan say retribution, just know that that is a heinous, despicable slander.
I don't disagree with you that so far it seems to me, obviously, a fact that many, many more Palestinian civilians, innocent people, are getting killed as retribution by the Israelis for what happened on October the 7th. That's indisputable, right? Their argument is that they're going after a terror organization, Hamas, and unfortunately in war, as Rabbi Shmuley correctly said about what Churchill did in World War II.
Churchill was wrong.
A lot of
Churchill was wrong.
Okay.
Was he a war criminal? Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Churchill was a war criminal.
Yes, he was. Churchill was a war criminal.
All the British
Let me do the
Churchill was a war criminal.
Let me do the
and George
question.
VI was George VI war
all of them war criminals. Yes, of course.
So anyone that, hang on, Rabbi Shmuley.
War criminal.
Let me answer. So let me get this straight. You think
collective punishment?
You think Winston Churchill
was a war criminal
in standing up to the Nazis
by killing the
who
babies?
Killed 12 million people?
I believe he was a war
criminal. That by doing what he did was a war criminal.
By killing in Dresden and Hamburg, by indiscriminate killing, collective punishment. My morality says that's impossible.
Okay, that means the British people who
that's
supported him and voted him in. They were
my morality says that's impossible.
Just a second.
That's what I believe.
But the British people.
You believe he was a war criminal?
Yes.
So therefore, your belief is that no retaliatory action.
No, you can retaliate to the man, not to the babies.
Tell me a war in history.
Yes.
Where civilians haven't been killed.
No, I'm not saying civilians haven't been killed. It's
just
about this ratio.
Or
it's about the ratio. It's about the ratio.
What is the ratio?
What about the ratio?
100 to 1 is unacceptable.
Actually, morally,
100 to 1 is unacceptable.
Actually, morally,
you accept.
Okay,
101 is an invention.
Hang on, Rabbi Shmuley. So let me give you a ratio.
Yeah.
How many people did the Nazis kill?
I don't know.
You don't know.
We know they killed 6 million.
They killed 12 million people.
I don't know. So we don't know.
Including 6 million Jews.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So
12 million.
How many died in Dresden? How many civilians died in Germany? Do you know?
I don't know exactly.
Right. So you don't actually know what you're talking about.
I do know what I'm talking about because I know in Dresden and Hamburg.
You said it's about you. Unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, go ahead.
Unless I'm wrong. You said it's to do with the
ratios.
The ratios.
Yes.
You don't know the ratios.
No, I know for a fact.
You call Winston Churchill.
What are the numbers?
Dresden and Hamburg.
What are the numbers?
Wait a minute, Rabbi Shmuley. When you call Winston Churchill a criminal, you're basing it on ratios you don't even know what they are.
There you go. It is good television and good for you, Piers, but let's just be clear here. And it wouldn't have come out if Rabbi Shmuley Batayev had not stumped in there. Also, did you notice that the Arab Brit who was there defending Hamas would not look at or make eye contact with the rabbi? Did you notice that? He wouldn't even acknowledge his existence. He would just put his hand up, but he wouldn't even look at him. It's incredibly rude and despicable and tells you a lot. But there you go. He got it out of him. Winston Churchill is a war criminal for executing the war in a way that would get the Nazis to surrender eventually after Adolf Hitler put a bullet in his mouth. The King George VI was a war criminal and the people of Great Britain. But of course, that means that you and I are war criminals too, in his mind. They didn't even get to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So Harry Truman is war criminals and the American people are war criminals. And that's where we stand. Listen, as Dennis Prager likes to say, I prefer clarity to agreement. You're never going to get that guy to change his mind and agree with you. But it's really important right now in these times to have them reveal who they are and what they believe. And don't forget, the intellectual left, liberals, Democrats in this country, for the most part, they're on that guy's side. They're on that guy's side. In fact, here's one of them. Oh, look at Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar was very excited because a rabbi, one of the rabbis for peace, came to her office. I was honored to meet with Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg, a proud Minnesotan. In our powerful conversation, we agreed that true peace can only happen when the current violence ends. I sincerely pray for an immediate ceasefire and the safe return of all hostages. Look at that. Just looking for a ceasefire. And she found herself a rabbi, Jessica Rosenberg, to agree. Now, there's a couple of things about this that are weird. Now, I don't think Ilhan Omar is a very tall woman, but I didn't know she was quite this short, right? I mean, she's a good foot or so shorter than the rabbi, which is weird because you got to think Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg is, well, what's the average height for a woman these days? Like 5'7", let's say? Yeah. And there's no way Ilhan Omar is 4'7", right? Maybe she's 5'2". Maybe 5'3". So what's going on? That's a very tall woman. Also, isn't it weird that she's wearing a mask? The congresswoman isn't wearing a mask in her office. Why on earth is Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg wearing a mask? Well, our friend John Levine over at the New York Post uncovered a picture of Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg, and now we know why she's wearing a mask. That's Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg. And yeah, she's about 6 feet tall. The good rabbi is. And that's a hell of a goatee. I don't know about you, but whenever I go up to Capitol Hill to meet with a congressman, I usually shave. The rabbi can't shave before seeing the congressman? That's kind of rude, don't you think? By the way, CNN absolutely loves this rabbi, really making the rounds. This rabbi says the fundamental threat in Israel is not Hamas. As Chaya Reichik, the woman, and she is in fact a woman, Chaya Reichik is, unlike Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg, Chaya Reichik, the woman who started Libs of TikTok, pointed out, a man pretending to be a woman also pretends to be a rabbi. As the aforementioned John Levine pointed out, they can't find a single rabbi to support them who isn't mentally ill. Well, that's a rabbi for peace. Oh, one more little note about the rabbis for peace, because you hear about the rabbis for peace all the time. You got Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other lefties who are screaming for Israel to surrender, which is the same thing as this whole call for a ceasefire. They keep saying, well, these rabbis for peace are on our side. The rabbis for peace. Well, here are the rabbis for peace. Over 40 rabbis bring the synagogue into public with the shacharit. Forgive me, my Jewish friends, if I pronounce that incorrectly, in front of Congress. This is a traditional prayer service and reading of the Torah. And on this day, they were reading a part of Genesis in Hebrew. Take a listen. Now, you'll notice there was a spot there, and she's going to do it again, this rabbi. where she gets really, really quiet. She almost whispers. She's like, it's almost like, like, oh, I'll just say this part really softly. Maybe no one will hear me, right? Take a listen again. And there it is again. Now, those who are watching right now who speak Hebrew already know the punchline here. What was the part there that the rabbi for peace decided to barely say audibly there as she was reading from Genesis? Well, according to Lazar Cohen, who I believe knows Hebrew, watch her drop her voice to a whisper twice when she awkwardly gets to the text, quote, "To you and to your descendants will I give all these lands," the lands of Israel. That would be God talking to Abraham in Genesis. Came time to say that. Ooh, let's not say this part out loud. Let's not rock the boat here. All right. Do we have time for one more? Let's do one more, because Keith Olbermann is just such a guy. Keith Olbermann, I'm sure you've seen this little dust up with Elon Musk and X and this whole idea that the hell is going on with him? Sorry, I haven't seen Keith Olbermann in a while. That's quite a look. Where advertisers are now following their marching orders from Media Matters for America and boycotting Elon Musk and pulling advertising out because he responded to a tweet that many people are calling just grossly and disgustingly anti-Semitic. And it was an inartfully worded tweet, that's for sure. Go watch Ben Shapiro and what he had to say about it, because I think he hit it right. The tweet said that Jewish communities are now seeing what the policies that they've encouraged over the years when we see all the anti-Israel Palestinian marches here in America. He shouldn't have said Jewish communities, because that makes it sound like it's all Jewish communities. No, it's certain organizations, certain left-wing, mostly secular organizations that do this in the name of their Jewish identity. But that now has created this firestorm. Elon Musk has promised to sue Media Matters for America. I'd love to see that happen, by the way. But Keith Olbermann, like a true leftist, he's got the solution.
It is time for the government of the United States to ban X, the social media site still largely known as Twitter.
I'll be honest, when I first saw this, the first thing that came to mind was, wow, Liberace has really let himself go. What has happened to this man? Look, I mean, he literally lives in his apartment and never leaves in New York. I've never seen him outside, except when he goes to the rooftop to rant on some of these videos. But there's more.
And yes, I get the irony. Scan that QR code to take you directly to the Friday edition of the Countdown podcast, because with his amplification of a post duplicating the hateful language of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooter, with his doubling and tripling down on anti-Semitism and...
Isn't it amazing that this guy can't do a 1-20 tease for his podcast without reading it and writing? Can I just tell you, I don't know if you realize this. I do this entire show without reading a damn thing. I wish, could we get a teleprompter here, please? Could we find something in the budget? Keith Olbermann has a writer. I got nothing. It's all coming out of here. But this guy is a professional pontificator and broadcaster, and even he can't tell you what he's going to say in his podcast 1-20 off the top of his head. That's a podcast I want to download. What a talent he is.
White supremacy, and with the likely Republican nominee for president echoing the hate speech of the Nazis and Hitler, Elon Musk is standing over a tinderbox of racial and religious hatred and intolerance, and the targeting of the, quote, other, unquote, that has never been fuller and never been drier in the history of this country.
It is amazing to me that after the 6 weeks that we've gone through here in America and in the Western world, post October 7th, that the first time Keith Olbermann decides to take to social media and create a video likening people to Hitler and decrying apocalyptic anti-Semitic rhetoric, it's Elon Musk responding to a tweet. And then, of course, he raises the specter of Donald Trump, the man who actually moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and who Benjamin Netanyahu would, give anything to have back in the White House at this point. He's decided that this is where he's drawing the line. This is where I've got to come out and speak out against the hateful anti-Semitic rhetoric that we see in this country. Not Rashida Tlaib, not the people on campus at universities who were screaming anti-Semitic Holocaust kind of, Hitler had the right idea stuff. No. That he's fine with. It's Elon Musk replying to a tweet. And what's his big point here about banning social media?
The peace and security of the United States of America is literally at stake.
Literally.
The president or Congress or the states or all of them acting together must ban Twitter X and sever all contracts and contacts with all of Elon Musk's other companies, SpaceX, Tesla, The Boring Company, Neuralink, and XAI.
See, this is what they're really trying to get at. They're trying to scare Elon Musk. They're trying to scare the shareholders, by the way, of those companies into putting a muzzle on Elon Musk. They're trying to get him out of the business of social media and free speech, and they're trying to threaten the government contracts that he has right now. By the way, it's pretty remarkable if you think about it. If you're looking at the social media landscape right now and you think, wow, which one of these platforms poses a real and serious national security threat to America? He's targeting the one that has the freest and most open speech, owned by a self-made man who has actually boosted the American economy through now the most successful and profitable American automobile manufacturing company, more successful, more profitable than Ford and GM and Chrysler. Let's go after that guy, but let's not say anything about TikTok, the social media platform that is literally owned, managed, engineered, and employed as a weapon against this country by the Communist Party in Beijing. Chinese TikTok, which is literally destroying our culture and warping the minds of young people in this country. TikTok, the social media platform that, as we told you last week, has propagandized young people in the Western world to actually celebrate Osama bin Laden. That's fine, according to Keith Olbermann. That doesn't need to get banned in the name of anti-Semitism because, Osama bin Laden was such a friend to the Jews. That social media platform is fine. It's X, Twitter, that needs to be banned by the federal government. This is where Keith Olbermann has drawn his line. Wow. The network that he's on should really be concerned about what he's... Oh, that's right. He doesn't actually work for any networks or any companies at all at this point because he's just that bad. He can't hold down a job because he's so insufferable and so horrible to work with. Even ESPN told him to leave. Even MSNBC had enough. That's it for today. We hope you have a great Thanksgiving week. We will see you next time. My name's Larry O'Connor. Thanks for watching. And please call me Larry.